So before I start, I want to actually turn it to our club president, Evelyn, if you want to kick off the program.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope this second part is as successful as the other one, which I'm sure it is. And Layla, I give it to you because you're running it today. So go right ahead.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. This is the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club program. This is part 2 of a program that we put together to address the project for redevelopment at the Chelsea NYCHA campuses that include Fulton houses as well as Elliott Chelsea houses. The first event happened on Thursday, November 30th. And it was well attended. The format was actually to offer those who are in favor and support the plan for demolition and redevelopment to come and share their views. And tonight, part 2 is actually an opportunity for members, tenants, and members of the civic society to actually come and express their concerns and their opposition and objections to the proposal for demolition and redevelopment. I am pleased to introduce our speakers tonight. We are joined by civil rights lawyer Norman Siegel, Salinas Miranda, who is a tenant at Elliott Chelsea, and Jackie Lara, who is a tenant at Fulton houses. We are also joined by Marquis Jenkins, who is a public housing advocate. This is our speakers tonight. Let me tell you a few words about how the meeting is going to proceed. We will hear from the speakers. They will give us a brief introduction about who they are, like 2-3 minutes. Then I will give a very quick, I think it's a total of 8 slides to sort of orient the audience, showing some maps and some renderings so that you have a sense of what this project and this proposal looks like. Then we will kick off the conversation with some questions and comments and historical perspective on public housing and on this particular project. And then we will open up to questions from members of the audience. We're going to put in place the same rule as we did for the Thursday meeting. We will limit the participation of participants to questions. So I'm actually asking you not to make any comments. I know that there will be some opportunities for that, but tonight is really an opportunity to ask the speakers some questions so that we can get more and better informed. I will ask you that you limit your questions to 30 seconds. And I will ask the speakers to limit their answer to 90 seconds. We're not going to get the clock out, but it is just to give you a sense that the idea tonight is really to as concisely as possible share what we want to share so that we cover as much ground as we can. Few housekeeping words, fairly typical. Please stay on mute unless you're speaking. We want to have good audio quality. We don't want to have any background noise. So please put yourselves on mute. When the time comes to ask questions, please use the raise hand function. I will repeat that. But we're going to try to have a really orderly meeting and to conduct this conversation as professionally and civically as possible. So I will turn it now to our speakers, and we will start with Norman Siegel. Norman, do you want to introduce yourself and say a few words about who you are? I think everybody knows who you are, but I think it's always helpful to remind us. And if you can tell us how you became involved with this particular project.
My name is Norman Siegel. My social security number is, anyway, I'm a civil rights lawyer. I care about public housing. The premise I'm going to talk about tonight is keep public housing public. Public housing sits at a crossroads, in my opinion. Through New York City, it was once in the forefront of the nation's commitment to affordable public housing. Decades of degradation, loss of government financial support, and the looming prospect of privatization have brought the future of public housing into question. Years ago, pre-pandemic, people at Fulton House got in touch with me. I met with them. I was very impressed with their spirit, their commitment to public housing. People like Jackie Laura, who's on tonight, and it's wonderful to be on a panel with Jackie. And the people understood the importance of what public housing is about. They knew that their rights could be affected. They learned that in other situations, and hopefully tonight we have time to develop that, in other communities around the country and even in New York, when the HUD used the RAD program to bring private developers in, their rights were minimized or in some instances taken away. So I've always been committed as a civil rights lawyer to the rights of everyone, but especially the powerless. And in this situation, I believe the people at Fulton, Chelsea are the powerless. It is a David versus Goliath. And I just remind everyone, David did win.
Thank you so much, Norman. Now turning it to Salinas Miranda. Salinas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening. I'm Salinas Miranda, a tenant from the Elliott development in Chelsea. I've been part of an organizing team whose goal is to preserve our homes, our community. Our buildings are strong and sturdy. They are not falling apart. We still need to see the proof that our buildings are in disrepair. 5 pictures on a PowerPoint presentation does not convince me. Let's do the tour. Show us how the buildings are falling apart. Show us all of the buildings. Somehow, even though there's a 20-year difference between the Elliott and Chelsea houses and Fulton being a whole different development at a different location, but somehow they are all equally deteriorating. There is no consistency in a lot, if not all, of the arguments that Essence and them have been making. Public housing was made to keep people off the streets, to prevent homelessness, to assist the most vulnerable. I can see that Congress wants to do away with public housing altogether. They refuse to use the funds that they do have on public housing. It's not available for Section 9, but somehow it's available for a corporation such as Related. Public housing provides security, protection, and stability for families and individuals. And I just wanted to add and say how much I love my home. I'm actually fascinated and love the landscape of my community. I love the big open space that we have. We have the right amount of population. We are not crowded in. It's peaceful, it's friendly and communal, including the abundance of trees that we have. It's enchanting in the summertime. Walking through this NYCHA neighborhood is breathtaking and healthy. I'm happy here.
Thank you so much, Salinas. And now I'm pleased to introduce public housing advocate Marquis Jenkins. Marquis, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and it's an honor to be here with each and every one of you. I think Salinas hit the nail right on the head. There's a lot of talk about construction and the repairs that need to be done, rightfully so. But in all this conversation about all the things that need to be done to repair our homes, what is often missing from the conversation is the community that's being built, that's been built, the community that has sustained one another over the decades, the blended families that exist in public housing, right? None of the construction plans that have been forth have honored the true nature, the true aspirations, and the trueness of the community that exists, the family environment that exists in public housing. And I say that because I always try to remind us all that we're not here simply fighting for the buildings. Yes, we want our repairs, but what we are fighting for is far greater than just the buildings. We want to make sure that public housing and the community that is public housing is here for future generations. I myself, Marquis Jenkins, am a community organizer, born and raised in public housing with my 9 brothers and sisters and a whole bunch of nieces and nephews. And this is why, for the last 17 years, I've been fighting as an organizer to preserve public housing. What we're seeing at Fulton Houses is a clear example of how our government is going the exact opposite way when we think about what we should be doing to address the larger housing crisis that exists in this city. And so my hope today is that along with the public housing political power and with your support and standing next to the residents, that we are not pushing for demolition of public housing, but we are pushing for the preservation of public housing through securing dollars for Section 9 housing and making sure that residents have stronger tools to hold NYCHA accountable in the way that they operate and spend the dollars that come their way to make sure that public housing communities remain safe and strong. So thank you so much for that introduction, for allowing me to introduce myself.
Thank you, Marquis. And last but not least, we're joined by Lara, Jackie Lara. I'm sorry, Jackie. Jackie, take it away. Jackie, are you still with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you. Fantastic.
Oh, great. Hi. Anyway, my name is Jacqueline Lara. I'm a 21-year-old tenant, and I came from a homeless shelter. And my fondest memory in Fulton is when they called me to let me know that there's an apartment available for me and my children. My youngest daughter was born there, so that's how I know, because she's 21 years old now. Fulton is a beautiful place. I've gone up and down the stairs of of each building, and the structure is phenomenal. We maybe need some good light fixture and maybe some cameras, but otherwise, in the summer, it's a beautiful place. My caretakers at Fulton, I got to give them credit, because as much garbage is going around, they try to keep Fulton very clean. And I oppose this demolition. I do not want this demolition, and we have to preserve what we have, because, there's a lot of homelessness, and I definitely believe we will have more homeless people if the demolition goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. So as I said, I have prepared a very quick, like 8-slide presentation just to orient people, to show you what this proposal looks like. This is taken from a deck that was presented by NYCHA in conjunction with Essence Development, which is the developer, as well as Related company, which is the other partner in this development project. So bear with me, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And let's see if I can. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Okay, I see some heads nodding. Okay, so the proposal that has been introduced by NYCHA, Essence, and Related would call for the entire redevelopment of both campuses, the Fulton houses, as well as Elliott Chelsea. So on this slide, you can see the Fulton campus. So To the left of your screen, you can see the existing buildings. So you can see that there are a total of, I believe, 11 buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 buildings that constitute 100% public housing. And these would be replaced. So this entire campus would be entirely demolished. And these would be replaced by 3 buildings, and you can see that to the right of your screen. Okay, so to the right, this is the proposed buildings. So the public housing would be then concentrated into 3 buildings. You can see the building in light orange here where my arrow is, and then those 2 buildings in red. So they would basically consolidate 11 buildings into 3 buildings. And then all these buildings where you see the little numbers, I don't know if it's large enough, and I don't know if I can zoom in, but hopefully you can see that. And I'm happy to share this deck with, we can put it on the CRDC website. It's also available on the Community Board 4 website. All these buildings that have those numbers, these are actually market rate buildings, okay? All right, I'm going to ask that everybody put themselves on mute. And Roberta, I think you are a co-host. So let me mute this participant. Sorry about that.
If you want, put me as co-host so I can help Roberta, please.
You are co-host, Lizette.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, sorry about that. So you can see that these buildings that have the little numbers, so all these buildings would be market rate and affordable housing. So the campus, the public housing campus would be really concentrated. It would be the same number of apartments, same number of units, but they would be concentrated into 3 buildings, whereas right now they're spread out into 11 buildings. So this is how it would be built. So this would be phase 1. So you can see that, this would be the very large building. And then there would be very large towers that would go up. And then this is the final version. So you can see that it becomes much denser. The buildings are much taller. I think that the tallest building here would be, I think, 37 stories. And so that would be how the Fulton campus would be redeveloped. So this is the Elliott Chelsea campus. You can see same thing, on your left, you have the existing campus with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings. And to the right, this is the proposed setup where same thing, they would consolidate those 7 buildings into 3 buildings, and the rest of it is they free up the land, developed as market rate condos or rentals with 30% affordable housing. So the phases of development, they would put a very large tower, which I think is, I think this one is 38 stories. And this would be the finished build out, much denser again, with very large buildings ranging from 22 to 38 stories. And then I have a slide. I have prepared a slide that talks about the survey. So this is the survey that was shared with. I'm sorry. I'm just going to put those participants on mute. Please stay on mute as we go through this program so that we have good quality of sound. Thank you. So the survey that was presented to the tenants basically had three options. One option was known as option 1A with rezoning. And it described a scenario where 100% of current residents will receive a new unit within new buildings on the existing campus. Option B would also accomplish the same. And then option 2 would also provide 100% renovation of all the units. So nowhere in this survey does it say that option 1A and 1B involve demolition, because originally in the very first iteration, it was always considered that there would be new infill buildings. So I just want to, bring this, and we can get back to the slide as we progress, so that, people understand what the language of the survey was, as I'm sure it is going to be discussed. So let me stop sharing my screen. Here we are. And we can get into the conversation. I think my first question is going to be to Salinas or Jackie. Can you tell us, back when this project started coming into shape, which I think was in 2018 or maybe even 2017, what was the discussion? Was there discussion of demolition back then, and what was the reaction of the tenants? So maybe Salinas, do you want to address this first question?
In terms of demolition, I found out I believe it was in this year, 2023.
No,
prior
but Salinas, I'm sorry. I'm talking about way back when they started this project. My understanding was that they did talk about demolition way back, and this was something that the tenants vehemently opposed, that they were absolutely against demolition when this whole discussion started at the beginning.
I believe that was in 2019. I wasn't aware that was going on at the time, but I do think that Jackie was involved in that part of the protest back then.
Great,
So,
Jackie, and maybe Norman, I know that you were also involved at the beginning.
Right.
So Jackie, do you want to take a crack at this one?
Yes, there was a proposal for building 11, which is on 19th Street, and building 1, which is my building, for demolition. That's when we were going against the PAC. And demolition. We started protesting, and that's when de Blasio put the working group together, and everything calmed down. And according to them, demolition was off the table back then. But yes, we did protest. I don't know why, how we won or however we won, but yes, that demolition was off the table, definitely, for those 2 buildings. After the working group, the conclusion was no demolition to none of the buildings, 50-50 on that market rate building. And I don't know, something changed between that and now. Something changed, and they just threw demolition back to us now. But now all buildings now. Now they got greedy.
So Norman, I know that you were involved at the very beginning. What is your recollection of this phase? Was my recollection certainly is that demolition had been proposed, and so vehemently opposed that that was taken off the table. Is that a fair description?
Yes, it is. And my recollection is it was a trial balloon to see whether or not the idea of demolishing public housing would be accepted, and it was vehemently not accepted. My recollection also, maybe Jackie to help me, I think they were focused on Fulton, not necessarily Chelsea,
Right.
with regard to the issue of demolition. There were weekly meetings on Saturdays. There were marches, demonstrations. I can recall Mayor de Blasio coming, and he was not received in any positive way. People were outspoken, respectful, but outspoken. I think he didn't realize that evening that he had such strong opposition. And we were also beginning to think that maybe we needed to litigate the issue if they were going to try to actually destroy the two buildings that Jackie referred to at Fulton. And then things changed because we then got into the pandemic. It became more difficult, in my opinion, to organize, to have people come and meet each other, even in the outdoors as well as indoors. And my recollection of some meetings that I attended for the working group, there was clear opposition to any demolition. And my understanding from talking to people like Congressperson Nadler and city council and assembly people was that they were with the tenants on the premises that in a democracy you allow the residents to make the major decision. And I thought the fight was over. We also at that point came up and made a presentation for what was called resident management corporations, which HUD allows. And what basically that does is allows the residents to become the board of directors of the housing project. So in Fulton houses, it would be a separate board made up of residents, which would have a legal relationship to HUD and to NYCHA. The Tenants Association, which everyone claimed really wasn't speaking for the residents, had a right to have a person on this resident management corporation. We talked about how this was a concept in the 70s and 80s that HUD was working on. But once Reagan came in, a lot of these creative, progressive ideas went out the window. But from my perspective, when the pandemic hit, I thought this was behind us, no demolition. And then lo and behold, in May of 23, I get phone calls from Jackie and others saying, oh, it's not just one or two buildings. They want to take a lot of them down. And so the issue now has become larger. And from my perspective, it's a land grab, because what you see is they're going to shoehorn in the existing residents into 3 buildings at Fulton. And then they're going to take and demolish all the other buildings to do what? To build private development so that the developers are the ones who are going to get the big win. And in my opinion, if this goes through, the residents likely will be the big losers.
Thank you, Norman. Marquis, I think you have a really interesting historical perspective on public housing that I think is a really helpful one to share. Can you tell us a little bit about how public housing came to be at the federal level? What kind of investment was made in Section 9, and how that over time started to shift to Section 8, and what does it mean for a city like New York?
Thank you for that question. I think it's extremely important to understand the full context that we're having this discussion in, and the climate that is driving the call to demolish the developments and the 2 developments. When public housing was first built in the 1930s, it was the answer to so many different questions that we had coming back from the Great Depression. One thing that you don't hear about now, which is bizarre, is public housing was created to create more jobs. We needed more jobs. But more interestingly is that for the first time in history, the government had created housing that was better than the private sector in 1934, right? So here you have this private sector that's looking at the government like, what are you doing? You're stepping on our toes. You can't be getting in the way of our profit. And so right then and there, public housing became an attack, right? And people of color weren't in public housing when public housing was first built. People of color had to fight their way into public housing. And people of color had to fight for rights and protections that we are fighting for today as it relates to public housing, right? And so throughout the entire time that public housing has been existence, the private developers or the private sector has been coming out of public housing, beginning in 1934 when public housing was first built. You had Robert Moses then come in and create the suburbs, right, which helped to sort of create white flight out of public housing, right? And then when you started to see white flight out of public housing, you also started to see more and more people of color move into public housing, which made the racist attacks even easier for the private developers to launch against public housing. And so now, not only do you have that, but then you fast forward and then they create the Section 8 program. And the Section 8 program is, again, another attack by the private developers to simply say, you know what, why can't we have access to those government dollars? And so the government created these Section 8 vouchers so that residents of New York City and across the country can take these vouchers and move into private buildings. Then we fast forward even further, and we start to see a city that is in huge demand for housing that is on steroids when it comes to development. We are running out of land. And so developers are salivating at the idea of being able to take over public housing properties.
So in essence, Marquis, the investment of public housing, like at the federal level, the money that the federal government is giving to public housing, instead of going to Section 9, it has started to go to Section 8. So Section 9 is actually the buildings that are owned by public housing authorities, right? And now this funding, instead of being allocated there for public funding, for public housing so that it can continue to be maintained, it is being diverted in the form of vouchers that are used to pay an apartment, but instead of being in a public housing, it is in private housing. Is that correct?
So I think there's a lot of nuance to what you said. In the context that I was talking about Section 8, it was in the context of saying that the Section 8 program was created, right, as the anti-public housing, to say that that government should be sending its funding to the private sector and it shouldn't have its own housing agency. Nonetheless, right, when we talk about Section 8, there are several different types of Section 8 programs, but there are two main differences between the Section 8 programs. There's one called mobile vouchers, and that is the form of Section 8 that you have a voucher and you can take it with you. The individual has the voucher and can move into any housing that will allow it, private being one of those types of housing. And the other is project-based, which means the Section 8 subsidy stays with the unit. So if someone moves out, they do not get to take that Section 8 money with them. It stays with the apartment so that the next tenant can take advantage of that subsidy. So there are different Section 8 ways or funding streams that exist, but overall this funding stream was created so that we can get away from, or so that the government can get away from funding public housing. This is a long-term plan. This isn't something that's just been started this year or just been started here in New York or just been started here with Chelsea Elliott and Fulton houses.
Yeah, thank you. So, and another question that we have heard, and that I think everybody wrestles with, is the existing condition of the buildings and how should they be maintained and upgraded. And those who are in favor of the plan have made the case, and at times very eloquently, that something needs to happen, and as much as this plan may not be perfect, there is no more time to waste. So what is the answer to that? And maybe Salinas and Jackie, you want to tap on this one, and and then Marquis and Norman, if you want also to address it. So what is, in your opinion, the response to that? Maybe Salinas, we can start with you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Sure. The tenants who are in favor of the project are making the case that the buildings are deteriorating, they're in bad condition, and that something needs to happen, that the status quo, like keeping things the way they are, is not acceptable, and that although the plan may not be perfect, it is better than keep the buildings in poor condition.
Yeah, I can't see how the buildings are deteriorating. I do see how we need maintenance. And I have heard some tenants complain that they have to wait to get repairs. I personally haven't had that problem. I guess it depends on the type of repairs that you're calling in for. But coincidentally today, I got a new kitchen sink. And I'm happy about that. I only waited 3 months, and I don't think that's a long wait. The only problem I have in my apartment now are tiles. I can use new tiles, but aside from that, my apartment is in tip-top shape. A lot of other apartments that I visit, the same. So I just don't understand this story of deteriorating buildings. I need to do a tour. Show me, give me a tour of what's making these buildings fall apart.
Very interesting. Thank you, Salinas. Jackie, what is your response to those who say, we cannot live in these conditions, and something needs to happen? Oh, you're on mute, Jackie.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I don't know, because my apartment is perfect as well. I mean, yes, we do need a little upgrade. I know a lot of people in Fulton. I've been to apartments that look like a magazine inside. So I don't know where they're getting this information from, and we definitely need a breakdown of this 1.5 billion, a breakdown of the physical needs. I mean, show us. I mean, plenty of times they talk about the boiler. Well, just show me all these damages that you guys are talking about. And there's never a tour. They never want to give a tour. Our building is not falling apart like that. That's a fib. That's a lie. Our buildings are not like that. As a matter of fact, the buildings are still holding up beautifully with all the lies they're saying.
Yeah. Norman, what is your take on this argument that the buildings are deteriorating, and that something needs to happen? The feds don't have the money, and it's not a good plan, but it's the best they could come up with, and we should just be satisfied with it.
Well, you in your opening pointed out that there's difference of opinions by the residents. Some saying it's deteriorating, we need to move now. Others, like Jackie and Salinas, are saying no. My answer always is that in a democracy, as long as we still have it, who knows what happens after 2024, but we have it today. And in the context, you let the people that's most affected by these policy decisions make the decision. What irks me the most is that on May the 12th, the people who are driving this issue put out a survey. They gave people 8 days to respond. Nowhere in those 13 pages is the word, this is a vote. And they then, based on the New York Times, said 950 people, 18 or older, voted. They said 30% of the eligible voters actually voted. That means you could have had 3,200 people who could have voted and should have voted. And they said 60% of that 30%, the 950, voted for demolition. That means only 570 people voted for demolition. You take the 570, not out of the 950, but out of the 3,200, and you get a whopping 18% were in favor of demolition. That's not a majority. It's not even close. And so then the elected officials, my good friend Nadler, other people, the city council people, they put out press releases one by one, picking up the misinformation and disinformation, saying the people have spoken. They're in favor of demolition. They didn't even understand the dynamic that was being played. The dynamic that was being played was to put out a spin and for demolition. The answer to your question, Leila, let the people in the two campuses. And also, I think that the difference back 5 years ago and now is the developers realized if they were only going to take over Fulton, they wouldn't make enough profit. So in a very unusual historical, as far as I know, they took two separate housing projects and combined them together for a project. 5 years ago, they weren't doing that. And so now it enriched the plan for the developers to do it. And shame, in my opinion, on the elected officials who folded by putting out the rhetoric that the majority of the people were in favor of it, and therefore that's what democracy is about. That's not what democracy is about.
So the one question that I wanted to ask Norman, and then I see that people are raising their hands, so we will get to the Q&A section of this program. Norman, as a civil rights lawyer, can you actually tell us the difference between a survey and a vote? To me, a vote is, there has to be like a safe box, it has to be monitored, and a survey is a much more casual thing. But what is your understanding of those nuances?
I think you got it right.
Hey, was that?
A survey asks people for their preference, their
No.
opinion. They can, but it doesn't, it's not an affirmation and it's not binding. That's the key thing. Roberta, you're shaking your head. In a survey, people are asked to give their opinion about something, but it's not binding. If this document that was sent out would have said that this is a vote, you would have had it in a different way. On one of the documents, it said the word ballot. Now, they can't say that because it said the word ballot when most of the stuff talked about survey. Second, if you had a vote, you wouldn't have had 8 days to vote. There would have been publicity. There would have been something that was very clear that it was binding and an affirmation that counts. A survey, as Leila said, it's just an informal way. And even if you do it formally through the process that they tried, the key is that it's not binding. And then for people, as I was making the statement before that disgusting interruption occurred, was that the elected officials bought into that misinformation by saying that people had spoken, giving the impression that it was binding. A survey is not binding. A vote is binding.
Thank you, Norman. So I see that there are lots of hands up. I know that lots of people have questions. So we are going to move into the Q&A section of this program. Once again, as I said in my introduction, I will ask you not to make comments. We're going to stick to questions. Please limit your question to 30 seconds, and speakers, I will give you 90 seconds to answer. Once again, we're not going to get a clock up, but just I ask all of you to abide by those general rules. As a reminder for all of you, our speakers tonight are civil rights lawyer Norman Siegel, public housing activist Marquis Jenkins, tenant Jackie Lara, and tenant Salinas Miranda. So let's get going. And the first question goes to John Mudd. John, go ahead.
Hi, I got two questions for Norman and Marquis. Norman, I know you say it's not binding, but they have the attitude that it is, and that's their common speak, by the way. So what, and Marty and I was talking too, I said, we see the only way is through legal action. I know you've been there as a consultant. Are you making steps towards legal action? And would you consider hooking up with other legal teams to try and fight this on a legal, from a legal standpoint?
Ultimately, John, I think it will have to be challenged legally. I've made suggestions to people of who to call with regard to groups like Legal Aid, Mobilization for Justice. They have some excellent lawyers. Legal Aid just set up a complete unit of lawyers just to deal with the issue of public housing. And I think that's great. Legal Aid's become, in the last year or two, a very visible and vocal organization. It's always been effective. I've also told a couple of people that if they set up a meeting with Legal Aid or Mobilization for Justice, if the time allows, I'll go with them. And ultimately, if the Legal Aid or Mobilization for Justice, and maybe both groups, wanted to, I would join as co-counsel. I can't take it on individually because it is not only a huge case, but it will create a huge precedent, because I don't think this is the beginning. I thought they chose Fulton and Chelsea because of the gentrification, High Line, and that area. I used to live on 23rd between 9th and 10th. And when I went back, recently, 5 years ago, and even more recent, the neighborhood's clearly changed. You all know that. And that became a place for these developers to hook up with the city. And the only way I think this is going to be able to be stopped is through litigation, because the elected officials who were with us 5 years ago, I'll use the word, they betrayed us. And so in the context, when that happens and you lose the executive branch and the legislative branch, the only branch you have some hope is the judicial branch.
Right down to the councils too.
Thank you, Norman. The next question goes to Lenny Rosato. Lenny, good evening.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for letting me on this. I just got a question for Norman and Marquis, because I think both of them are well educated and with everything that's been going on and happening. Have any of you two had meetings or spoken to anyone from HUD? I mean, I'm with the, we could say Section 9, awesome, I'm with it. But my thing is, HUD is the main organization, the main department that we need to talk to. And I just wanted to know if any of you two guys had meetings with them and spoken to them about where they're going in the future with us. I mean, because back in 2020, under the Trump administration, when we were doing food deliveries to all the seniors in here in Fulton, I actually met with Lynn Patton myself. And, she was with her Ben Carson. And she kind of took 10 minutes out of her way to kind of fully give me an earful of what, under Trump's administration, her people in Carson, what they thought and what, they shared with me. So I was just wondering if any of you two guys had spoken with HUD and received any info on them, you know, to future of Section 9.
Lenny, it's good to see you again. I hope you're doing well. My view of a civil rights lawyer learned in the civil rights movement in the South in the 60s, I'm the technician. I would write to HUD. I would meet with HUD. I would correspond with HUD, but I only do it as a mouthpiece for the residents. So if the residents want to reach out to HUD, if they want to reach out to any elected official, if they want that meeting, I'll try to set it up, and if they want me to go. But I never lived in public housing. I don't live in it now. And I think that there's too often people who come in to the controversy dealing with public housing and tell people what to do when I don't know whether they have standing to do that. The people who have standing are the people in Fulton and Chelsea. If the people in Fulton ask me to do X or Y, and I think it's reasonable and legal, I'm there for them. I'm not going to initiate it on my own.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, and it's good to see you, Lenny. Thank you for being here tonight. The next question goes to Ian Moon. Ian.
Good evening. Good evening. I just had a question in regards to Mr. Siegel, Mr. Marquis. Have you guys had the opportunity to visit the Elliott, Chelsea, or Fulton houses and actually see the massive amounts of damage that are incurred? Mold, mildew, leaks, plaster, asbestos, paint. I can't name enough. As a former NYCHA employee who worked in both Elliott, Chelsea, and in Fulton houses, I can guarantee you the amount of damage is it's unexplainable. It's unexplainable. There are tenants who have severe holes in concrete ceilings. There are tenants who don't have walls. There are tenants who don't have sinks. And NYCHA is giving them 7, 8, 9, 10 months of this happening. Are we going to continue to allow this to happen? We have, I mean, clearly there's damage, massive amounts, safety's a concern. Lobby doors don't work, intercoms don't work, elevators don't work. 13 years I spent with NYCHA in those buildings. I have family who live in Elliott, Chelsea. This is not deplorable. This is beyond deplorable. You wouldn't
let's Ian, I think we get the sense of your question. Let's get maybe Marquis to touch on that, and then I mean we have two
computer audio.
You know, everybody's giving an opinion though, but they're giving an opinion from the outside. Nobody's seeing the damage that I've seen.
Why don't we ask Jackie to take this one? Jackie, do you want to speak to that?
I don't know. I don't know yeah, I don't know what apartment. I'm not from Chelsea. I'm from Fulton, but I have no idea about this disgusting mold and all this other stuff he's talking about. My apartment, you could come to my apartment. I've been there 21 years. I have no problem. Maybe I'll have one now because I'm doing this meeting with you guys, but I don't have any problems in my apartment at all. I don't need NYCHA to come to my apartment to fix anything. No mildew, no mold.
No, that's what you assume. That's not what's behind the wall.
We're not going to do any cross conversation. Ian, I'm going to ask you not to do cross conversation. We're going to try to have a very civil conversation. You have.
Oh no, it's civil.
Jackie,
it's very civil.
Jackie, which I'm asking you to abide by the rules, okay? No cross conversation. So Jackie, you are a tenant. Salinas, you're a tenant. I think that, you know, tonight the goal of this meeting is to get people's views expressed. We had a program on Thursday where those in favor had 2 hours plus to express their views. Okay, so the next question goes to.
May I actually chime in on that, because I think
Yes,
that's
go ahead, Marquis. Go ahead.
I think that's a very important question, and just quickly a little background about me. I grew up in public housing, have 9 brothers and sisters who grew up in public housing. Was on been in the same apartment on the Lower East Side in Versetti houses for 33 years, and yes, I have visited Chelsea, Elliott, and Fulton houses, and many apartments all across the entire city. I think each development has its own unique issues, and people and the question is not whether repairs need to be done. We all believe that residents need to be in a safe and healthy environment. The repairs for some NYCHA residents are worse in terms of it's having a direct impact on people's health. So we understand that. I think everyone in this room understands just how bad it can get in public housing. And for many residents, it's at a different state. But the question for me, and the question that the residents who preserve public housing comes out with, is what is the best way to get the residents what they need, right? We, again, are not talking about just repairs, right? What the residents are being asked to give up so that they could get what they automatically are entitled to is ridiculous. They are asking to give up 50% of their land. The residents are asking to give up the rights and protections that come under Section 9. Section 9 and Section 8 are 2 different programs, not just in the way in which the programs are funded, but the rights and protections that are afforded to residents are different under Section 9 than they are Section 8. And we can't be disillusioned by the reality that when a private company comes in, regardless of what that private company does, they are in it to make a profit. They will be able to do things to public housing buildings that NYCHA cannot do. So the good news here is that we got everybody to the table to talk about what the future of public housing should look like. And more importantly, we got everybody here who should be following the leadership of the residents who are directly impacted by what is being proposed. If NYCHA and the real estate company can come up with a working group in 2019, come up with a plan, and then decide, you know what, we're going to change this plan, regardless of what the circumstances are. They decided they were going to change the plan. What happens if 2 years down the road, they decide they need to change the plans again? Residents need to think long-term about what is going to be the best direction for them, and the best way
is not the best direction.
We're not going to do cross-conversation. Marquis, can you wrap up so that we can move on to the next question?
The best way to move forward, as everyone agrees here, is to let the residents make the decision. But in order for the residents to make an informed decision, the residents need all the facts and the information that comes with that. And something as basic as a physical needs assessment for both developments have not been done. So how can you come up with an estimate? How can you come up with a plan without allowing the residents to understand fully what is wrong at their development? Residents are being asked to give up way too much for something that they are already entitled to.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody's entitled to anything.
Ian, thank you. The next question goes to Michael. Michael, go ahead. Michael Noble.
Yeah, thanks. You know me. I was part of the working group and all the committees thereafter. I'm a resident, I'm on the community board, and I've watched every single one of these meetings, and I've seen Norman Siegel's.
Oh, Michael, you're muted.
Why? Okay.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, I did. So I don't know what you heard and didn't hear. I'm saying I saw Norman Siegel's other presentations on this, addressing this survey vote question. I wonder where 3,000 comes from when there's 2,056 heads of households. But beyond that, okay, beyond all of that, okay, I question that because I watched the survey happen. I watched people just trash the survey. They see NYCHA on a letter and just throw it away. They don't want to look at it. So that sort of indifference is what saw you get 30% turnout, larger than what the number of people who vote for the mayor, for example. Okay, right? In the city of New York, 30% ain't bad, right? You got to admit to that. But beyond that, you heard Simon Kowitsky say the other night that, this survey ballot vote thing was not necessary, didn't have to happen. If we go back, and I asked Marquis to, listen in on this point, okay? Section 18 is what steers this thing. We don't talk about it much, but NYCHA has always had, under the Housing Act, this goes back 100 years almost, the right to demolish a development or an apartment or a unit or a building, whatever. They've always had this right in Section 18. If you can show that the place is in disrepair, you can apply for a Section 18 permit to do that. When RAD came into the picture, right, 2018 or whatever, it was then added to Section 18 to make that that right that public housing authorities have to demolish buildings in furtherance of the PACT program. All right. So that's what you have here. We have a PACT RAD program that is, essentially what the government wants us to use. All right. It doesn't. We don't have to have.
So, Michael, wrap up.
So what I'm saying is, you're getting bent out of shape over this survey when NYCHA can do this on its own. They don't need us. They can get the EIS, they can do the Section 18 application and just be done with it, right? Yeah, Norman, they can. That they can. That's how it works.
I'm going to jump in on this one, Michael. I think that everybody on this call really values public input and really values community input. So much as what you're saying is correct, it is true that NYCHA can decide single-handedly to do something extremely hostile to this community. Yes. And I think that what we are seeing here, the manifestation, is that a lot of tenants feel exactly this way. So we fully understand that NYCHA has lots of powers, but this power, overwhelming and disproportionate and geared towards favoring a major developer, doesn't necessarily mean that it is right. I will give this one to Norman. Go ahead.
Michael, they have the power. That doesn't mean that they have the constitutional authority or legal authority to do it. If they decided under Section 18 to move to demolish all the Fulton houses, that case legally would be stronger than the case we're facing now. They need to have the burden of proof in a court of law to show that it's worthy of demolition. Right now, they're going ahead full steam based on a survey. They didn't have to do it. Sure, they had to do it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the argument that they're now making that the people wanted it. If they use Section 18, that would be a much stronger legal case to do.
Section 18 underpins the.
Thank you, Michael. I'll get back to Michael.
Norman should know this.
Michael, I will get back to you. Michael, I will get back to you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to other questions. Thank you. The next question goes to Susan. Susan, go ahead.
In all this stuff, like I don't get much of the the email. So I didn't know about this until I went to your party last night and somebody said there was a meeting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about it. And David gave me the thing. Make sure you have my email. Make sure you have
Okay.
my phone number.
We will
Another
make
thing-
sure of that. Thank
Another
you.
thing, another thing at the meetings that we had at Hudson Gill, a lot of people were fighting. We never gonna get a straight answer what's gonna happen here. And I'm scared about it because we're never gonna get an answer. When they have a meeting, they have too many people in the room and they start fighting. And the last meeting I attended was with Miguel and Hector Velasquez and Jamar was there and all the new people were there. We cannot have a meeting. So every time we go to a meeting, it doesn't get nowhere. We don't know what's gonna happen. And my cabinets are falling apart and everything is falling apart in my apartment and stuff like that. So I need to have, and I need to make sure we have the email on my phone number to send me the meetings so I can be on them and I can support you guys.
Sounds absolutely, Susan. Absolutely. We will absolutely make sure of that.
But I want to know what's
for
going to
sure.
happen in the future. Are we going to do demolition or are we going to stay in a house and they're going to fix our apartment while we're in here?
Yeah,
That's
and
what I wanna know.
I think this is why CRDC runs these programs so that we can continue to have these conversations and hopefully
And
get a better sense of really what is going to happen. Thank you, Susan. The next question goes
I
to
continue to come and I continue to support. I will give you money. I will send you money for the meeting. I will send you money.
Thank you. No need to send any money. Thank you, Susan. The next question goes to Joyce Wilcox. Joyce, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, this is particularly for Jackie and Salinas. I remember in 2009 that there was a petition drive at Fulton that the majority of heads and households came out against demolition and privatization, and none of the politicians and Essence and related aren't talking about this expression of tenant desire. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, and also, I understand that the Legal Aid Society was so alarmed about the demolition proposal that they asked the city to withdraw it. If you could tell us about those two things, I think it would be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. I don't know who wants to take these questions. Salinas, do you want to start on the drive?
I believe there was a petition back in 2019. There were in the Fulton development. I think the number was over 600. And yeah, it doesn't seem to matter that people didn't want it. It doesn't seem to matter that the working group decided no demolition. The tenants really don't have a voice. It's all about servicing the private developers. That's how I see it.
Thank you. And so I will actually read from the statement that the Legal Aid Society, along with the Community Service Society, issued when it was announced that the plan had morphed into demolition. So they wrote, this plan is unequivocally not resident-led and is guaranteed to uproot the lives of thousands of vulnerable New Yorkers, many of whom have resided in the Fulton, Elliott, Chelsea community for generations. And this is a quote attributed to Lucy Newman, who's an attorney with Legal Aid Society. And they also claim that further claims that the proposal is resident-led are misleading. So this is the position of, a civic organization that has been in existence in New York for a very long time. The next question goes to Hector. Hector. Hector, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for holding this really informative meeting. My name is Hector Vasquez. I was a former Tenants Association member at Elliott, Chelsea, and at present I'm a Fulton Houses Tenants Association member. I've been involved in the community for over 30 years. Okay. I've seen the worst that these places have to offer, and I've seen the best. And the best really comes from the people that live here. It's a really great community, but they are living in conditions that are deplorable, as we all know. My question is that obviously there have been allegations that tenants were not actively involved with the process concerning the plan for Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton. I myself, along with other tenants, were involved with the working group initially. Okay, and we went to all the meetings just like Mike Noble did. And we were involved with the subcommittees and then some, and even the selection committees after that. And we continue to do so, and we're invited openly to go back at any time when they have meetings. And so is anybody else if they want to get involved. There are no closed doors discussions. Basically, if you want to go to these meetings, it's open to everyone. But when it becomes disruptive, it becomes an issue. Okay. Also, Jackie Lara was a member of the working group along with a few other in the beginning, but she stopped going altogether in the beginning. While other tenants did stick it out, and we were able to come up with a really solid plan to protect our rights in our homes. Now, my question is for Jackie specifically. Basically, I know that the allegations for the plans for Elliott, Chelsea, and Fulton that people were not involved is false, obviously. Jackie, do you agree that a resident needs to be here to actively be involved, to show up at the meetings and be informed and, look at any mailings or any answer phone calls concerning Elliott, Chelsea, or Fulton? That if they're involved, that they would know the truth and not the lies being spread?
Absolutely. I mean, if they agree to it, yes, they should go to every meeting. But nobody's spreading any lies, and you know that, Hector. Nobody's spreading lies.
Okay. So basically, do you agree that a person should be living here as a resident, correct?
Of course.
Okay.
How long you been living in Fulton? Let me ask you, how long you been living in Fulton?
I've been living in Fulton for 4 years, and prior to that, Elliott, Chelsea for over 27. Yeah, exactly, right. And it is housing.
So let's not do once again. The
anyway,
goal here is
I understand.
not to have
okay.
arguments.
My
The goal is really
my
to
point,
advance our understanding of what's going on. So Hector,
yeah.
we heard your question. So
no,
I'm going to go to the next person. The next person
don't mute people like that. That's rude.
Okay, thank you for this comment.
You didn't silence the other people. Why
this is
silence
supposed
these
to be
tenants?
I will go to Evelyn. Evelyn, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone, again. I am a tenant in Fulton Housing, and I've been living here for 15 years. I was a part of the meetings at the beginning where our elected officials were going. And also, if I believe Jackie wasn't part of it, but she went to every meeting, that I would say. And she can correct me if I'm wrong. She was very active the same way everyone that was going to them. Now, I hear everyone saying about the apartments. Yes, my apartment, if you were to take out the shower, the plastic they put over it, there's mildew there all the time. But besides the things that they have to fix, my most important thing is security. Now, when it comes down to housing, we have derelicts, we have homeless people on the roof. You call the police and they cannot do anything because it's public housing. But yet, if it was to happen some other place, Penn South or some other place, they would remove them right away. So besides the things that are breaking down, my issue is security. And now I have a question for Jenkins, is his name? I believe the last time he joined our meetings, he had said something that he can make the housing into co-ops. I would like some more information about that. So that's my question to him. How can housing become a co-op?
Thank you, Marquis.
If I may just say this one sentence before I answer your question, because I think your question gets at the heart of it. It's not, again, the question is not, do we need to repair public housing and to what extent we need to do repairs in each development? The question is, how do we get the repairs done and how do we make sure that we keep the apartments in operated order, right? And so NYCHA and the government wants us to believe that there are only two options, but there are multiple options that we could and should be exploring at this time. We have the ability, right, to take the housing crisis in New York City as a whole and fix it through how we imagine us addressing the problems here in public housing. The 964 rules and regulations that govern public housing participation are unique to public housing residents. It gives public housing residents the ability not only to run a tenant association, have succession rights, have Section 3 so that they can earn additional income, but it also gives them the right to take over full management of their development. So if a tenant association wanted to organize and say, you know what, we can do a better job than Related in essence, there are rules and regulations that allow for the process for residents to take over management instead of giving it to a Related and an Essence. And we have seen through COVID-19 just how bold, courageous, and organized our tenant associations are when we need them to be. Truth be told, it was not NYCHA who was on the ground making sure that residents get the vaccines that they need, that residents get the supplies that they need, that residents get tested. It was the residents and the tenant association presidents and board members who did all of that work. So if anyone who has a larger stake, if anyone who is the expertise in how to fix public housing, and is anyone who cares how the money is being spent and how the job is getting done, it's public housing residents. And we can, if residents are interested and want to take over, we can. And there is a mechanism in the 964 regulations that allow residents to do that. Right? And the last thing I will say to this, right? Miguel was wrong when he said the federal government doesn't want to give us any more money. And I say that respectfully because I respect Miguel. But I say that because it's false in that Section 8 funding comes from the same place that Section 9 funding comes from. And it is the government's decision on which bucket they want to put their money into. Do I put it in the Section 9? Do I put it in the Section 8? Do I evenly spread it out between the both of them? Right?
But that is the problem now.
Right.
The problem is that we have no money, and how can we get it to do what we have to do?
My point is that the government has the money. The government is deciding to put the money in another bucket. And the reality is that the government is putting that money in another bucket because it benefits the private sector. But overall, it is racism that is driving the forces here. And I'm not just throwing that word around racism, I'm throwing it around because the vast majority of people who live in public housing are poor people of color who sit and live on prime real estate, and the developers are doing everything within their power to get public housing residents out. It's a conscious decision by all levels of government not to fund public housing, right?
Okay, so, but we're still in this situation.
I'm gonna ask you to wrap up so that we can move to the next question. But I think it's a very, very important point. But also, just to go back to Evelyn's question, how can Fulton and Elliott Chelsea turn into co-op? And we're not going to answer this question tonight.
I'll drop it in the chat.
Complicated question, but I think that exploring this path is something that we have heard many tenants want to pursue that. And this community is a very stable community. People have lived in these buildings for a very, very long time. And so once again, we're not going to answer this question right now, but I think we need to continue to explore that. But I have a follow-up question on that. Is there currently any community outreach with the tenants, and who is doing this outreach? And maybe Salinas and Jackie, you can speak to that. Is there anyone in those buildings who is actually helping tenants figure out how to become a co-op, or what
No, please stop doing this.
is going on?
No, I'm not aware of that, of becoming a co-op. There's been no outreach.
But is there any community outreach currently?
No.
No community outreach. I was under the impression that HOU was doing community outreach in the buildings. Is that no longer the case?
I don't know.
They are Lorana, they are community. The HOU is doing that, but they didn't really come in yet, so they don't know what's going on. They're waiting to see what happens so they can come in.
Okay, thank you.
I've been going there talking to them too.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
HOU, they've been contracted by Related, and their job is to respond to them. So I'm not sure exactly what their role is here with us.
Yeah, I don't know either.
What about how can we get fundings to help us if that's what people want? Because I hear a lot about fundings, but we're not getting none.
So I think that is
Marquis.
I think that's the essence, and what's so important about this political club having this conversation. I can't stress enough how the decision makers here are our politicians who are deciding which bucket they want to put the money in. And the beauty about having this conversation here is that the politicians, the elected officials, and the candidates come to you all to ask for your vote. And in solidarity with public housing residents, you can say that I need you, when the budget comes along, I need you to prioritize public housing, right? We see the gross income disparities that exist in terms of what the government is putting into public housing, right? But we see that with ERAP, right? Our state government decided not to give public housing any ERAP, and we had to go back and fight for that funding. We can solve our problems simply by demanding our elected officials give us the funding that we need. We can go into the Section 8 program, but you know what? In 10 years, we're going to have the same problem that we had with Section 9 because the government's going to decide they don't want to fund Section 8 anymore.
Yeah. I think that this is a very good point. I think that politically, a political club such as CRDC can actually do a lot. The next question goes to Matthew Robinson. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, the buildings, from what I understand, were done in 1965. In 1965, we didn't have that many octogenarians, people 80, 90. And I'm sure that right now there are plenty of them. I'm not sure if the existing buildings can handle the ADA compliance, the handicap friendly elements, and I'm not sure if the buildings can handle social services, if there's a local dentist, a local doctor, the drug issues that may be existing. And I think some of the new buildings were supposed to incorporate some of that. But I'm asking those that live in the building, how friendly is the building to those that are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s? And do you believe that the buildings can sustain that over the next 20, 30, 40 years?
Okay, so are the buildings ADA compliant?
No.
Absolutely. Or friendly.
So
I can answer that. I see the accessibility all over. I know yesterday, what's her name? Lynn. She mentioned that the new buildings will have all these ADA accessibilities. They will meet the standards, but so do ours. My neighbor, she passed away, but she was on a wheelchair, and I never heard her complain. She came into the buildings in her wheelchair. She had no problems maneuvering in the hallways or getting into the elevator. Her apartment was there are selected apartments that are made to meet ADA requirements. So her door was wider than the rest of ours. So yeah, so I don't see how
yeah, so yeah,
we don't.
the buildings are accessible for people with different types of mobilities.
As a former NYCHA employee, they are not. They're
Okay,
made.
Ian, thank you so much. Thank you so much, but we're gonna stick to the
I would like to say Ian has a lot to say. Is he a tenant at the Elliott development or Fulton development? He's just a worker, and I don't understand his passion.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, all right. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. Thank you. The next question goes to Phyllis. Phyllis, you can unmute yourself. Phyllis, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Okay, I will come back to you, Phyllis. The next question goes to Renee.
Oh, Renee.
Renee, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, so I keep hearing that everyone says
Oh, stupid.
Renee, you went back on mute. Okay, I will.
Hello.
Yes, Renee, we can hear you. Go ahead.
So these questions are not asked about Penn South. It was built in 1962 before. Okay.
Go ahead.
It was built in 1962 before Elliott, before Chelsea and Fulton houses. But these questions aren't being asked about that. I feel that people are trying to justify our demolition. Last but not least, the Chelsea houses were the state-funded and defunded housing development. So these are the questions that should be asked by everyone. Why were they not funded? Why does our state senator not do anything to help to fund it? That's a question that should be asked to Brad Hoylman Siegel. Everyone keeps saying everyone saw the survey. Nobody did. You didn't have to do the survey, but you're using it for destruction of our homes. This is not a redevelopment project. This is a land grab. We all understand it. We are the Indians that you're trying to put on a reservation and then hope that we survive or use us as indentured servants. This is what is really going on, and we need to call it what it is. Last but not least, you need to explain why on May 20th, when the survey ended, on May 26th, the draft plan of the PHA agency plan on May 26th, it is marked demolition and disposition. We know how NYCHA works. There's no way that happened in 6 days. So let me ask you, When was this plan hatched? The plan has changed. Or was this always the plan? That's the question that I think needs to be really asked.
Wow. Thank you, Renee, for sharing that. And just so that everybody understands, you are a tenant of one of those campuses.
Very good, very good.
Susan, please, no cross conversations. Thank you so much.
No.
Renee, you are a resident of one of those two NYCHA campuses.
I am a resident of Elliott. Yes, I am.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, I think that those are the really spot on questions that you're asking. The next question goes to Roberta.
So I have two questions. It seems to me, and maybe this is very simplistic, is that a third party could actually do a survey, some party that's not involved could do a survey right now and make sure that all of the tenants are represented and that the survey is both in English and in Spanish and maybe Chinese and any other language that's represented in this housing, in these two campuses. That's number one. I mean, I don't see that as a major problem. I mean, people do voting and things all the time. The other thing is that I was under the impression that NYCHA by law had to do a survey of the conditions of the housing every 5 years. It seems to me the same thing as the survey. It should be possible to go in and maybe some apartments are in great shape and other apartments are not. It is not unreasonable to have a survey of the buildings and find out, get a list. Where are the problems? Are the boilers working? How is the plumbing? Do these apartments have heat? I mean, this is not rocket science. We could do this in a matter of weeks. So I don't know why we're left with he said, she said. This is very simple. You get a group to go in and evaluate the state of the buildings and what has to be done to bring them up to a standard that's acceptable. And I don't understand why this cannot be done.
Yeah, so I'm going to take the first crack at your question, Roberta, and then I would like to have Norman's opinion. We actually touched on that on Thursday when the NYCHA representative was with us. We basically go from an assessment of the repairs in 2018, and it is 300 million, and then in 2019 it becomes 495 million. And then actually in the survey that is done by NYCHA every 5 years, which comes out in 2017, the number is actually 450 million. And then 5 years later, NYCHA and Essence and Related tell us that it is ballooning to 1.1 billion, while at the same time, the assessment in the books done by NYCHA is actually 900 million. So all of that data, and sorry for bombarding everybody with numbers, but basically makes the case that something that should be simple is actually very controversial. Because if you ask two different people how much does it cost to repair the elevator, those who want to demolish the building are probably going to say it costs a lot of money. And those who want to save the building are going to say, no, it's not true. It is actually not going to be so costly. My big takeaway looking at the needs assessment that is done by NYCHA is that throughout all the campuses, you see an increase of roughly more than 100% from 2017 to 2023. And to me, this is telling us a story that, I mean, we know buildings. I mean, how often do you have a building that deteriorates in 5 years to the point that you're doubling the amount of money you need to spend to maintain it? It's very bizarre. It's unlikely. And that the same thing is happening throughout all the campuses This is very, very odd. And but I want to hear Norman's take on that. What do you make of these assessments where, you know, the numbers keep ballooning, and what confidence can we have that actually the number is the correct number? And are they, in your opinion, making the case that, you know, it's become so expensive that the only path is demolition, when in reality, maybe the repairs are not so extensive?
The numbers are suspect. You did a good analysis, Leila. Second, I do believe, to the question that Renee asked, Renee, they had this plan a long time ago. It didn't come out on May 12th, and they were aided and assisted by the developers. And they recognized that this was a good location to begin this public-private partnership, which I think is misguided and antithetical to the original concept of public housing. I want to take my additional 30 seconds to answer the question before I go back. We did a paper in 2020, actually February 3rd, 2020, which was a concept paper, Resident Management Corporation, a viable option for Fulton House residents. It's viable for Chelsea and everyone. That means it's a not-for-profit organization that are validly incorporated in the state of New York. And what it does, the Resident Management Corporation becomes responsible for managing the development. The board is consisting of exclusively members of the campus, of the development. They have to be residents. They manage the program. The funding, instead of going to NYCHA, will go from HUD to that board of directors. The board of directors then decides who they want to retain, who they want to consult with, and what direction they want to go with regard to management. So therefore, it's a vehicle that exists under the HUD regulations that was tried in many places in 1970 and 1980. It then went out of fashion. I recommend that people consider the resident management corporations, and it gives the power to the people. If hypothetically someone in that resident management corporation wanted to retain these developers to do what they're thinking about doing, but do it in a different way so that you don't have as many non-public housing buildings, they could do that. And you're not precluded from including even developers, but you are the power broker vis-a-vis that, because the money coming from Washington goes to the Resident Management Corporation. Give it some serious thought. It could be the way to resolve some of these problems.
You know, very good points, Norman. I think we really need to explore those possibilities urgently. Tito, I see you. I see that you have your physical hand up. Go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Hi. Well, many people in the room know who I am, but just for little backgrounds, because it's important to this discussion. I worked for HUD for many years, and I've also been a tenant advocate on the Lower East Side with Cooper Square Community Land Trust, and this land is ours, Community Land Trust. I think Norman's going in the right direction, and other people mention it too. We need an alternative plan. I can say that in the Lower East Side, over on Delancey Street, in a development called Essex Crossing, we fought that fight for 50 years, but the tenants didn't give up. The community didn't give up. We were able to get the right to return guaranteed, and we were able to get 500 units of affordable apartments. But one of the most important part of that is that they were all income integrated. So if the developer wants this land and there's no other way of going around it, which I don't agree with, then it should be totally integrated. And the market rate money that goes for the rental or maintenance should subsidize the other tenants. That's another way of doing it. Another way of doing it is community land trust. So Jenkins said it, Norman said it, a number of people said it. We need an alternate plan. There are alternate plans out there, and that's what we should be looking at and try to educate people around. That's what I think we should try to push forward. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tito. Norman, your thoughts on community land trust and also the integration of public housing and market rate and affordable.
I think Tito is very eloquent. I agree that you have to take a look at alternatives to what's on the table right now. That doesn't mean you have to exclude the developers even, but you're the one who's directing them, not them directing you.
Right.
Yeah, very true. The next question goes to Yvette.
Good evening. I am a tenant at the Fulton houses. My question goes to Lenny. As a representative of the tenant association here. Hello? I'm so sorry. So as a representative of the tenant association who is in favor of public housing, keeping her public housing, and you've been working you are also part of or was part of the working group. How is it that the 4 developments were actually tallied as one vote when it's Fulton houses, Chelsea, Elliott, and Chelsea addition? And what are the numbers for each development? When can you guys produce that for all tenants to view, for all developments, and not counting it as one?
Thank you, Yvette. So the format tonight is really to give an opportunity for those who have concerns with the demolition to speak. We actually had a chance to have those who are in favor, and that was happening on Thursday. I'm not sure that Lenny is necessarily ready to address this question. The one thing I can tell you is that this question was asked of NYCHA, and they really adamantly refused to respond. So I think that, the follow-up question was, do we need to foil that question? Meaning, do we need to do like a freedom of information law request, which, by law, they would have to do it. And even to that question, the NYCHA representative did not respond. So, I think this is very critical. We really need to understand, how these different campuses voted, and lumping everything together seems absurd. And, you are right. There are four different campuses, and each one should have an opportunity to have their own voice heard. So, I think this is something that we're absolutely going to follow up on, and if need be, I guess we will do a full request to get access to this information if NYCHA continues to refuse to produce it. But it is something that we are very aware of. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvette. Norman, do you want to touch on that, on the fact that the breakdown of the survey has not been produced, and that NYCHA, up until now refuses to release the data?
Well, the data needs to be made public. The other question that someone raised previously on that was that in 2019, when we did the petition, and I have a copy of the petition, there were 525 people who voted no demolition. We specifically said that if there was a family of 3 or 4, only 1 vote per unit. This time, in addition to what Yvette and you have just talked about, we should also find out whether or not were votes more than 1 per unit, because the question then becomes, was not, and again, never use the word vote, Layla, as you just did, because there never was a vote, in my opinion. A vote is very different. And what they did is did a survey, and people didn't respond. If you had a real vote with an independent group organizing it, counting the ballots, and limiting it perhaps to 1 per unit, then maybe at least some of the arguments I'm making would not exist anymore, one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. The next question goes to Wakey.
Hey, hi. So I work with the HOU, and I know you had asked before if there's some type of like community service or someone that I guess represents the residents. So what HOU, we're here for that. So what we do is we work in a diverse range of affordable and mixed income, public and subsidized housing, and specializes in assisting tenants and residents that are in transitioning due to major development, renovation, or renovation in place construction projects in their community. So our mission is to ensure that the residents are treated fairly and experience minimal physical and emotional stress during the during the relocation process, while ensuring that our clients' projects are completed in a timely and cost-effective manners. So we have surveyed a couple of residents and we have told them like what's going on, the process. And we're just here to be the liaison for the residents. If they have like any questions, we try to be transparent with them. And I know some of the residents that are on this call, we have surveyed them in person. So we do either in our office or in their home. So we are actually here to, I guess, be the liaison and just represent them.
Great. So Wakey, can you actually, and thank you so much for being on the call. This is really very helpful. Can you tell us, are you physically located on the campuses? Do you have an office there?
Yes, so in Fulton, our office is located in building 420 West 19th Street, where they're from 9 to 4. The apartment is 1E. And then we also have another office located on Chelsea Elliott. So that building is on 415 West 25th Street. There is a silver door. When you walk up, there's a silver door to your left. And we're there also 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then sometimes we also do weekends.
In Elliott, are you also, is it also in an apartment?
Yes, an apartment, yes. Both offices are located in an apartment, correct.
Okay.
Right. It's underneath the building.
Susan, you are not recognized, please. Thank you. Thank you. Wakey, can you tell us actually who contracted you? Are you contracted by NYCHA? Are you contracted by Essence and Related?
So it was Essence and Related. They contract us.
Okay. Okay, that is very helpful. Thank you. The next question goes to Rosemary. Rosemary, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Rosemary.
My question is to Norman. Why all of a sudden they bought the property and they said only working people and they took away our grandfather laws? And what guarantees us that we can stay here being that we're on fixed incomes and we don't work and we're already seniors?
Norman, I'm actually not sure what your question is, Rosemary. Or
okay, I'll repeat it then. I'm sorry. They said that we're not grandfathered, and I've been here for 31 years. They also said they only want working people here. I'm a senior on a fixed income and I'm disabled. What guarantee do we have with these new developers that we won't be aced out because we're not working people anymore?
Okay. Okay.
Can I answer that?
Jackie, go ahead, and then Norman, go ahead, Jackie.
First of all, sweetie, it's not a done deal. I mean, this developer has been doing meetings and acting like everything is a done deal. There's no done deal yet, so we could still fight for this. Yes, you're right. I heard the same thing, that we're not going to be grandfathered in, and that's why we have to keep, public housing public. But it's not a done deal yet. And, if you want to get in contact with me, get in contact with me.
Thank you, Mommy. Vice versa.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Jackie. And
Okay.
Norman, I think, like more broadly, like the notion of the right to return, we've heard ironclad contract, but we've also heard in 2019 no demolition. So how can we have any trust in the process?
Well, I don't think you should trust any of these folks. I think what you have to do is you have to negotiate, and you have to try to build into the rental agreements between the residents and the development team, the management documents between NYCHA and the development team, and between HUD and development team and NYCHA. And you have to negotiate and demand that those things that you're now talking about are in there, and that you have a contract. So if it's breached, then you can go to court to enforce it. The history with regard to people who are told that they can come back, sometimes they can't come back. And also, I think you have to be concerned about when the developer takes over. We saw this in Far Rockaway under the RAD program, that as soon as it changed management, all of a sudden, NYCHA building was the single largest entity in the city who was evicting people. So you have to be concerned that you build into these agreements, contracts between all the players, HUD, NYCHA, and the development team, that there are certain rights that have to be put in there. And without it, you have to say that you don't agree. And again, one of the reasons why you want to vote is that if it's not in there, people would then have to campaign and get people to say no. Then it's binding. At least if you go to court and I tell a judge that 62% of the people voted no, I got a strong argument to stop it. And judges, again, my experience after 53 years of a civil rights lawyer, judges are human. And when they hear that kind of stuff, that you went through a process that they respect, the rule of law, one person, one vote, that's a strong argument to stop an abuse of power.
But actually, Norman, I find it incredibly daunting that, these tenants are going to have to hire lawyers and educate themselves on a process that is just so incredibly complicated.
Lucy Newman.
What resources do they have? Because it looks like, the consultants that are brought in are funded by a developer, which, then puts into question, the kind of message that they are pushing. So how are these tenants going to get the legal assistance that they need, the independent legal assistance protecting them and their interests?
Chelsea Reform Democratic Club should call upon legal aid. Lucy Newman, the person that you read from, she's now the head of a unit that's specifically, I personally called her to try to have a meeting. She never called back. Now, I'm not, a super person, but if she didn't call me back, other people told me when I told them to call her. I think if groups like Chelsea Reform Democratic Club and other people listening, legal aid is terrific. They're such a good organization. They know this issue. They're empathetic with the issues that we're dealing with. They've got resources. They got a super executive director now who's turning it to be a very visible and vocal group. They have the expertise. If they got involved, it doesn't cost the residents anything. They'll be eligible, and that's the course to do. The other group is Mobilization for Justice. They're very good. I think if both the groups came together, I would work with them. There'd be other pro bono lawyers who would work with them. That's the way to do this stuff. And if the other side, including NYCHA and the mayor, begins to hear that kind of legal opposition, they start rethinking this plan. It ain't a done deal. It ain't a done deal.
Also, Norman, I have another question. How come they're not doing background checks?
Background checks on who for what?
On anybody, on any tenants coming in or renewing their leases. Why aren't they doing background checks to the new people coming in?
Well, I'm always,
I mean, I don't
always
know.
concerned. I'm concerned as a civil libertarian when you want background checks. People in power usually discriminate against not only people of color, but people who have pasts or people who even have a criminal record. These days, they discriminate against people who have views that they don't agree with in the Israeli-Hamas war. So you got to be really careful about talking
Well,
about.
I would like to know who my neighbors are. I would like to know there's nobody living next to me that has a really bad criminal background, because
Well,
that would hurt
just because they
in the
have a
long
criminal
run.
background doesn't mean they're a bad person today.
No, but if they have a bad record, that does affect the people coming in this building, the people living here who are seniors.
We've challenged that kind of stuff. So I disagree with you on that part. I agree with
Okay,
you.
you
on
could
the other part.
disagree, no problem. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. The next question, Salinas, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So I wanted to add, as you know, HOU got contracted by Related, and their role on this campus is to push for demolition and influence tenant decisions. I've gotten testimonies primarily from elderlies of how their choice for demolition was influenced. And I caught 2 HOU tenants taking down our Raising Liberty flyers, and I caught them on time to record it. I have it on video. So behind closed doors, these conversations are biased. They are not a neutral third party. They're contracted by Related. It's obvious. And there's something else I wanted to say. And then when I confronted Amber, the HOU worker that's in charge of the staff, she wouldn't tell me who ordered them to take it down. She's concealing and protecting the person that's giving them those orders.
Thank you for sharing that, Salinas. The next question goes to let's see, I want to call on people who have not yet asked questions. Maya. Oh, Maya, your hand went down, but if you want to go ahead with a question, you can unmute. Okay, then I'm gonna call on Michael Noble.
Oh my wow.
Yeah, just a question to Norman again. I hate to be picking on you, Norman. Forgive me for that. But I wonder.
Not the first, and you won't be the last. Go ahead.
I know, well, lawyer to lawyer. So that's the combat here. If there was not a vote or a survey or whatever existing in this deal, right? Would you be involved with this case?
Affirmative, yes.
In what capacity? What would you be doing?
As I was.
You'd be contesting the RAD conversion. Is that what it's about?
Just as we did in 2019, I didn't have to go to court. We were able to be there to give guidance to people about what their First Amendment rights were, and to also make arguments as to why what they were talking about on demolition before was not a good policy issue. So you don't have to litigate issues.
Right. Well, that's why we did the working group. The working group came into existence because of all that.
Right,
we're all in favor, and we're all in favor of doing that.
Where's my point? And at this point, unless you get a majority of the people, as I said before, if I had to go to court and I could tell the judge that there was a vote and that the vote was done fairly and uniformly, and X percentage, a majority, overwhelming majority, said no to demolition, that's powerful.
Yeah, I would love to see the electors, the election people going door to door and saying, look here, let's have your say on this to every single person. I'd love that.
So
you made I'm going to just go, you made that point about at 30%. It wasn't 30%, it was 18%. And even if it was 30%, that's disgusting. That's not what democracy is about. And what you try to do is encourage people to vote. I know people who died, people put in jail in order for the right to vote. And I think that the right to vote is precious. It's fundamental. It's being attacked all over. The folks in Fulton and Chelsea very clearly have the right to vote, to express their opinion in a fair process, not in a sham that happened here on May 20th.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Norman. The next question goes to Evelyn.
Yeah, I forgot my question.
I just want to say that as a tenant and as president of Chelsea Reform Democratic Club, I'm concerned about everyone's safety. And if we can get the funding to fix the problems in the buildings, I would go along with it. But if we can't get the fundings and we're not safe in these buildings, I would go for demolition. And that's just my opinion. And I would like to know, where can we get fundings? Because I hear a lot of people talking, we can get fundings here, there, but we haven't. So that's my main concern.
Well, I think that's another good point, and I'm sorry for jumping in, but I think the other critical thing to understand is that private developers are not coming out of their pocket because they want to be nice and give money to the people who live in public housing. It's just not happening. They are borrowing this money, right? And so I am not a fan of borrowing, but if we are going to trust anyone with borrowing money, the New York City Housing Authority is not going to be the people that we go to. They have a horrible track record in how they are managing the funding that they get now. So why would we trust them or private developers with borrowing money that can result in the foreclosure, right, of NYCHA property, which is the overall goal anyway? This is not a listen, the goal is to end the public housing program. This is, as much as we want to give NYCHA credit for all of the work that they're doing, this program was created by HUD, the very people who are supposed to oversee NYCHA, right? So there is a huge plan that is coming through the pipeline here. And so again, our fight is not just to save the buildings. They want us to believe that the fight is to save the buildings, but it's the right to remain in our community and have all the rights and protections that are afforded to us, that we sign a contract that says we are entitled to.
And I do agree with you on that. But again, my point is, I hear a lot of this and that. How can we get the money to fund so we can, and also to get the police to take homeless people that are living and pissing in the halls or shitting? How can we get the police to get them out? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this one or that one is right. All I'm saying, getting to the point, how can we get the money to fix the situation that we have? That's all I'm saying.
We have to shed ourselves of the false narrative that the government does not have the money to adequately fund public housing. The government has the funding to do that. We saw what the government—
they haven't.
But why do we think that they're going to fund it under this new program? The private developers are not looking to take care of public housing residents. They are looking to make a profit. So they are.
My question is, how can we get money to fix our problem?
I hear you.
Not where we're getting it from.
So I think that, what one suggestion that Norman had, that is also something that Marquis mentioned, is that there are different types of management models, and that the tenant-led management has not been explored. And as Norman explained, if you go this, or maybe it was you, Marquis, if you go this route, then the funding from HUD goes directly into this newly formed tenant-led management company. So here is your funding. I think that we need to do more exploration of those possibilities, because right now it seems that those who are maybe in charge or maybe in power have not really helped look in these directions. The narrative has been very single-minded, which is it costs too much. There's nothing else we can do. This is the only thing we can do. And I think that we need to move away from this narrative with real answers on, because I think that Evelyn's question is a very valid one. Where do we find the funding? So I think that, CRDC can play a role there in, actively helping, like concretely answering this question. So I just want to be mindful of the time. It's already 9:21. We really need to move this towards the end. So I'm going to, so I see that Jackie and Salinas, you have your hand up. I will give you an opportunity to wrap up this conversation. I'm going to go back to John, and then to Renee, and then we will wrap up. So John, go ahead. I don't want you to be
Leila,
yes,
I'm sorry.
yes,
John, can I just make a point of information to what Evelyn just said?
Go ahead, Lizette.
Okay, I would like to emphasize that the funding, just like you said, and Norman has said, the funding is there. Marquis has been saying it. So we in the CRDC, we are in a perfect position to hold the elected officials accountable. So just yesterday, we were hanging out with them. Fine. But besides hanging out with them and being nice with them, we have to hold them accountable and tell them to start doing their job and assign the funding to the things that they need to be assigning the funding, because the funding is there. So I just have to say that for the record and get it out of my system. Sorry, John.
No, that was perfect.
Thank you, Lizette. And John, I don't want you to be flustered, so.
No, that was perfect, Lizette.
I will really appreciate a concise question. Go ahead, John.
Sure. I'm so glad you said that, Lizette. Marquis, yeah, we know their goals. We know the goals of corporations to make money. They're going to downsize us and get rid of us. Okay, Marquis, there's precedent here, and you know the history. There's precedent that's been set in Rockaway in Chicago. Can you elaborate a little bit on that precedent and the history? And we know about this film, of course, but other places, and it seems to have a thread running through all of these developments.
I'm sorry, you mean precedent for how
they operate? They go in.
How the resident management operates, right? Or resident management?
Yes, the developers and.
Yeah, so I think the question is, when public housing was privatized, how did that play out? Whether in Rockaways or Chicago or Miami.
So first of all, it's helpful to understand that RAD is an iteration and trust is the iteration after RAD. But before there was RAD, there was Hope 6. After Hope 6, there was Petra, and there was a litany of different programs that aimed to tear down public housing. And when they first started, they started with the notion that they needed to deconcentrate public housing. So our federal government and all levels of government have been at a making conscious decisions to defund public housing all across the country. New York was not always the largest public housing authority in the country. In fact, Puerto Rico was larger than New York City, and they no longer have public housing in Puerto Rico. So what we're seeing with all of these plans is a clever way to pull a wool over public housing or pull a sheet over public housing as they tear it down from the inside out, while still cleverly figuring out the ways to make a profit, right? Because the developers are going to make a profit on both ends of this scenario. They're going to make a profit because they're going to receive the additional funding from Section 8. That money does not go back into your homes. It goes into their pocket. That, right? And then the other thing is, if they default on the loan, then the property goes into foreclosure and they're able to sort of make money on that end as well. So there is no good sort of direction when we talk about private-public partnership. The private-public partnership started with companies paying their fair in taxes. If they paid their fair taxes, then we can move more money towards public housing. Again, let's put this in context. Even if we're talking about $78 billion, we're talking about $78 billion over a 20-year period, which leads us to about $20 billion a year that we need. And certainly we can get that money from all three levels of government. Again, they are choosing not to, but we are choosing to put them in office. We can make the choice not to put these elected officials in office who do not want to adequately fund public housing, especially in partnership with this political club.
Let me, if I can just answer directly two things for precedent, John. The Government Accountability Office conducted an investigation into HUD and their RAD program and found the lack of civil rights protections and guidelines written to protect tenants in converted developments. Come back to New York. The data supports people's concern and anxiety about their rights being eroded. City Limits in August 2009 reported that Ocean Bay Houses in Far Rockaway was the first public housing development in New York transferred under RAD. The conversion brought much needed repairs to a development debilitated by Hurricane Sandy in 2012, but the new private manager quickly escalated evictions. Between January 2017 and February 2019, the new managers reportedly evicted some 80 households, making it the top development for evictions under New York City Housing Authority. So residents, you have concern about any anxiety you have about an erosion of your civil rights.
Beautiful. Thanks,
Thank
both.
you, Norman.
Yeah.
The last question goes to Renee, and then I will give Salinas and Jackie the opportunity to wrap up with closing comments. Renee, go ahead.
Okay, everyone keeps asking, what's the solution? It's calling making NYCHA accountable. They only spend 5% of their money. Where's the other money is gone? You need to have a financial audit of how they're spending money and where it goes. We know our development, Elliott, Chelsea, the walls on the ground floor were supposed to have been done. It's only done in one building. The tiles were supposed to be replaced. It's only been done in one building. The money has always been there. We have chosen not to fund certain things. We have chosen to leave apartments vacant and empty. Over 6,000 apartments are vacant in the New York City Housing Authority. Allegedly, we have a housing crisis. Some of these apartments have been turned into places for HOU. Should that be going on? Some of these places are for tenant association leaders. Should that be going on? No. If you actually fix the housing, people can move from the shelters to those apartments. Then the migrants can get in. We can't keep blaming everyone and fighting each other while everyone else sits there and laughs. You need to make people accountable. From NYCHA itself, our elected officials, the state needs to get involved, the federal government needs to get involved. All these people need to make someone accountable, NYCHA, whomever, and then start dealing with the alleged housing crisis that we're just building larger apartments and making everything unaffordable. That's what needs to be done.
Yeah,
we don't need to discuss resident
Renee.
management companies. We need to fix what's dealing with now. Deal with Section 9.
Thank you. Thank you. Salinas, go ahead with your closing statements.
Actually, I wanted to respond to what Evelyn asked in terms of security. We do have security. We have public housing police department. Why they're not on campus cleaning up? I have my suspicions, and I will tell you. I found out that they have meetings with related, and more than once. I believe it's monthly meetings. I guess they will respond and be on campus if the proposal goes through, but they're not ready to do that now. There's a tight-knit relationship. Lenny Rosado, the Fulton TA vice president, he's also a board member of the Public Housing Police Department. So they're all interconnected with each other very well, and they respond to each other well. Okay, so in terms of the closing statement, I do have some comments to make. I don't understand how Danielle Sherrod from HUD is ready to put a stamp on approval on demolition without questioning anything. There's a survey floating around cyberspace. Nobody can get their hands on it and prove that this is a legit survey. But yet, elected officials, Eric Adams, Jerry Nadler, Eric Botcher, representatives from NYCHA, and Daniel Sherrod from HUD are all okay with ruining a whole community based on a bogus and non-existent survey. How can this be possible? I don't understand the logic behind this. These people with money and influence who are lying and cheating are not being questioned. It makes me feel that some of these elected officials were part of the plot. They were in on this from the very beginning and have some serious cleansing of their hands to do. Can I make 2 more comments?
Quick ones. Go ahead.
Okay. Oh boy. What makes Related so sure that their plans for Fulton, Elliott, Chelsea houses will work? The Hudson Yard in itself is a failure. They have a lot of empty apartments. People do not want to live there. There's too much going on. Retail, office, residential, and tourism, all within a limited amount of space. Rich folks, like everyone else, want to live in a place that feels communal, not congested. Related.
Salinas, you're breaking up actually. Can you get closer to the microphone?
I'm so sorry. Should I start over?
No, you're good. You're good. Now we can hear you.
So yes, the Hudson Yard in itself is a failure. They have a lot of empty apartments. People do not want to live there. There's too much going on. Retail, office, residential, and tourism, all within a limited amount of acres. Rich folks, like everyone else, want to live in a place that feels communal, not congested. Related is right about one thing. There are buildings in Chelsea that need demolition, and it's those at the Hudson Yard. The Hudson Yard look horrific. It's out of place and out of character in our neighborhood. One more comment. Their main argument is the plumbing system. If this is what's causing the buildings to deteriorate, they just gave us the cost to install a new plumbing system. As a matter of fact, add the cost of electrical updates and new elevators. We don't need an upgrade on the common grounds. We don't need new windows. We don't need new gas pipes. There's a lot that we don't need. Just give us the cost of what we truly need. Everything else could get fixed or replaced along the way. By the way, if our gas pipes were a problem, we are in immediate danger. Our buildings are at risk of an explosion. On the PowerPoint presentation that Simon showed us, all I saw was a rusted gas pipes that could use a paint job.
Thank you, Salinas. Jackie.
Hi, everybody. NYCHA, so far, our development belongs to NYCHA. There's no enforcement going on at this place. That's why the homeless are coming in. People are breaking our doors. At one time, this would have never happened in Fulton houses. People were written up. Pit bulls are loose everywhere. As a matter of fact, a pit bull almost killed my little dog last week. So, they're terrorizing us. That's what exactly they're doing to the residents. They're terrorizing them. They're letting everybody do whatever they want. And it's not fair. It's not fair that we have to live like that. And NYCHA's just promoting all this stuff going on with these pit bulls being loose, but being in the park, in the children's park. I mean, it's becoming really dangerous because NYCHA's the one that's prepping all this up with the developer and the TA president, everybody that's involved in this, and we're just being terrorized by all this homelessness, and people busting the door. We got cameras there. What's the cameras for then? I mean, they're not enforcing anything. They're just letting people attack and do whatever they want.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
all I want to say.
Thank you. Marquis, quick wrap up, and then Norman, you'll have the final word.
Again, I want to thank you so much for having this important conversation and I was able to catch the conversation that took place last week on Thursday, and later I thought you did a phenomenal job in asking the right questions that needed to be asked and holding them accountable to the things that's being said. We all have common sense here. We all understand the needs of public housing, and nobody understands those needs better than public housing residents. If the plan for Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses is a great plan, then Miguel Acevedo should be able to stand here and give you the full presentation. Why? Because he fully understands it. There is a lot of ambiguity in this plan, and it is designed that way to keep you guessing and to keep you staring at shiny items like a new stove and like a new bathroom. At core, what we are fighting for, as Selena said it, as Jackie said it, we're fighting to hold on to the culture, to the community, to the vibrant life that is public housing. We all know how bad the conditions are. They are killing us. But yet we are fighting to protect the precious thing that we call home. These are not just buildings, these are places where we raised our children. And these are places where we celebrated birthdays, baby showers, Christmas, Hanukkah, and all of those other holidays that come throughout the year. My purpose and my goal in working through the Residents to Preserve Public Housing and speaking with you all today is to stand in solidarity with the residents of Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses, to ask and beg of this political club to stand with the residents in the ways that you deem fit, to make sure that we're not just fighting for the repairs of public housing, but we're fighting for the adequate funding. We're fighting for the adequate oversight of public housing. And most importantly, we're fighting to make sure that whatever the future holds for public housing, that those decisions are being made solely by the public housing residents. So again, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Marquis. Norman, you can have the final word.
Thank you, Layla, for running a really interesting and thoughtful and timely program, and Chelsea Reform Democratic Club for doing this. I wish we could have been in the same program confronting the proponents, but maybe that could happen in the future. My past and present has always been, when we're in these moments of time, that people who have powerful voices are disrespecting the powerless. I turned to one of my heroes, Martin Luther King. Dr. King told us that we should not wallow in the valley of despair. And although it does look like there's grounds to be a lot of despair these days, we can't go there because the other side wins. So what I urge everybody, including the club, especially the club following off on Marquis' call, we need your leadership. We need you to speak out, but also for the people that are listening, who are the residents in both Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, don't give up. This is a fundamental principle, the right of public housing. It comes from New York. FDR created it. LaGuardia created first houses. We were the leaders on the whole concept of public housing. To some extent, it's our legacy, and we need to come together. We need to be respectful of people who disagree with us, but we can agree to disagree, and we should be steadfast. We need to demonstrate. If the police aren't doing what some of you are saying, do a demonstration in front of the police precinct. Get the TV people to come. Call the mayor's office. Get them to get the police department to do what you're talking about. Second, just because the developers are there, I wouldn't throw them out the window. I wouldn't trust them, but we could negotiate and work with them. We have leverage. And so going back to Dr. King as my role model, when there's these moments. Don't be down all the time. Let's keep our spirits. Let's smile. Let's be protective of each other and be supportive of each other. And as Dr. King always told us, we shall overcome someday. Hopefully it's in 2024. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening and a good holiday season.